Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Even Better podcast. This is your host, Sinikka Waugh, and I am so delighted to welcome you today. And with me today, I've got Tyler Kamerman. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Tyler, this is so much fun. So for those of you who do not know Tyler, I just invite you to pull up a chair and stop what you're doing and come enjoy this conversation, because I have had the joy to get to know Tyler these last several months. Maybe, I don't think it's quite been a year, but it's been several months, that maybe a year, I don't know, some period of time escapes me. But Tyler and I have gotten to know each other here in the community of Indianola, and I have detected, and it does not take a lot of skill to detect that Tyler is a man of passion. He is absolutely passionate about what he does and how he does it, and passionate about his community, passionate about his goals, passionate about the work that he does, passionate about continuing to pursue his passion even with a day job. And this, I think, is really, really cool. Yeah, really cool. And you inspire other people to do that around you. So that's cool too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so this is part of our ongoing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help people have better work days, right? So our audience, for those of you who are listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Our listeners include people who go to work, right? So we've got project managers, we got business analysts, we got individual contributors, we've got small business owners, we've got people leaders, we've got large business owners, we've got people who sit in corporate seats, we've got people who run restaurants, we've got people who are at home taking care of their families, we've got people who have days that they want to get better, and our mission is to help them have even better days. So that's why we're here. And Tyler, you are the Chief Development Officer. You're also a speaker and a podcaster. So you've got your own podcast, Pursue Your Passion. So tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have an episode that comes out every 2 weeks. And simply put, every episode, I'm talking to a different person who is actively, intentionally pursuing their passion. And the list of guests has been vast: actors, musicians, to owners of large companies, to people in the middle of a startup, and people who've successfully taken a business from a hobby all the way to selling it for millions, and all things in between. It's been such a fun journey, and I love that. I love the way that it's played out.
Awesome. Okay, so you've got your own podcast, but that's not your day job, right? Your day job is also a chief development officer, and we met through your day job. You are always spinning more plates than you should, probably. You're located here in Central Iowa. So you and I have met through your work at Many Hands. So tell us a little bit about what you do with Many Hands. Are you allowed to talk about that?
Absolutely. Yes, please. I am happy to talk about both my side gig and my real gig. I am one of the fortunate ones. That's been a neat part of this process too, is, with the Pursue Your Passion podcast, we talk a lot about, some people are able to find something, Sinikka, like you, that you love getting out of bed for every day. Some people aren't. I wasn't up until about a year and a half ago. And now I would say it's my job to go out and tell the story of Many Hands. And that's many as in lots, not many as in small, for those of you listening. So yeah, as development officer, obviously it's my job to bring in money, but I really do say, and I believe it's my job to go out and tell the story and find people that are interested in partnering with us. And there's so many ways to do that. I'm talking to businesses, churches, individuals. We are a faith-based organization, but you don't have to be to really dig what we're doing, because we're focused on community development in Haiti and on the island of Abaco in the Bahamas. But we've also got our thrift stores here that are helping to strengthen our communities, giving dignified shopping experiences at, and high quality product at affordable prices.
Very cool. So today's topic, we're going to talk about 5 ways to find your passion. So you seem like the right guy to talk about this. So as we think about the Even Better podcast and how we position this, when our listeners walk away from a podcast, what we hope that they've walked away with is a tip, a nugget, a tool, an idea, something they can apply, something they can use in their work days, in their days, to make their days even better, right? That's what we're hoping for. And your topic today was 5 ways to find your passion. So how did you pick this topic? Why this topic, Tyler?
Yeah, well, lots of reasons, but I'll try to be concise. Knowing what you're focused on, trying to help people have a better day. I already kind of talked about how it's everybody's job to find a job that they love, right? Because they once heard if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I can tell you, you're still going to work. You're just going to like your day a lot better than if you don't love your job. We're not all going to get to that point where we get to say, man, I'm so excited to go to work. But I can tell you that if you are pursuing a passion, either at your job or outside of your job, it's going to make your day job so much better. And managers, if you're listening to this, I promise if you're managing a group of people that are doing what most people would consider to be a very monotonous or, day after day the same thing job, if you can encourage them to find something that they're passionate about, they're going to have better days every day, which ultimately they're going to produce more for you every day if they're having better days. So when I thought about what you like to talk about on your show and how I could kind of bring my little piece of the world into it, that's why I wanted to talk about, you said it more eloquently than me. 5 ways to find your passion.
All right. 5 ways to find your passion. Well, I think as we were preparing for this, one of the things you pointed out is that people tend to overcomplicate this. Is this real? Have you seen
Yes.
this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear people all the time. They're like, "Oh, I'm trying to find this, and I can't figure out what it is, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing." And I think people just they overcomplicate it. They think that there's got to be this big magical thing, and I also think that one of the ways that they overcomplicate it is thinking that it does have to be huge. Like if it's a passion, it's got to be world changing. And I'd love to tell, and I'll keep names anonymous because I don't want this guy to hear what part of what I say about him. But I met a guy once, and he was high up in the corporate ladder. And to be frank, I didn't enjoy really any of our conversations. As I was getting to know him, I'm just like, this is dry. He doesn't seem interested in talking to me or about what he's talking about. Doesn't seem interested in his job. And he was, a ways up the chain, as they say. But then one day he told me about his passion, and it was beekeeping, which is not something that, unless you come up with this new brand of honey that's going to dethrone the honey champion of the world, you're not going to get rich doing that. But when he talked about that, his demeanor changed immediately. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is your thing. And it wasn't, like I said, I think to go back to your question, we think that our passion has to be this thing that's going to rock the world or everybody's going to want to jump on board with it. And it's not what it's about. It's about finding something that makes your heart sing, and doing that thing is going to make you happier, and it's going to fill your life and make you more fun to be around too.
What fun. All right. So 5 ways to find your passion, to make it more fun to be around, to make your work days go better, right? I love it.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So your first question, first way to find this, you've got something about what did you want to be growing up? Unpack this for us. Talk us
Right,
through.
right. So that's one of the questions that I ask all of my guests on the show. And for the most part, there's some direct correlation to what they're doing now, or more importantly, what their passion is. And so because they're on my show, they are pursuing their passion, but that's not the case for everybody, right? So I always say when I'm talking to someone, it's like, well, what did you want to be when you grow up? And sometimes it's like, well, I wanted to be an ostrich farmer. Okay, well, that was very specific. So we might have to try to figure, we might have to dig a little bit more there. But going back to what you wanted to be as a child, before it mattered how much money you made, before it mattered who you married, before it mattered if you went to college or where you went to college, before it mattered what you've been doing in your career for 10 or 5 or 30 years, what did you want to do? And a lot of boys wanted to be a police officer, and I'm being stereotypical, but I just hear those answers. But that's typically a great place to start as far as trying to figure out what you should be exploring as what might be a passion or your main purpose that you should be going after.
Mm, I love that. So as I think about what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I think about how I live, what I'm supposed to do with my life, I can't help but think about my grandmother, just one of the one of the people that I look up to. Both of my grandmothers just set a wonderful, wonderful standard for me, and just a wonderful legacy. But one of them in particular, she was this woman. She came over to this country as an immigrant and didn't speak a word of English when she got here, and learned the language and had this really amazing ability. She was an amazing cook and had this ability to serve people. And she had a bed and breakfast eventually that was frequented by big names on the East Coast, and just really,
wow.
really lovely. Yeah, just really lovely stuff. But there's this story about her that is what I aspire to, right? This is what lights me up, is when I think about what I wanted to be. It's because I hear this story about my grandmother. And it was, my mom was a teacher, and so I know I wanted to teach, and so that's woven in there. But there's also this thing about my grandmother. I wanted to be just like my grandmother. And there's this story of her being this highly accented woman in this strange land, right? In a man's world, frankly, in the early 50s or whenever it was that she was doing this. And there's this lot of land, as the legend goes, that the realtor, she and the realtor meet about this land with a property on it that's going to be a bed and breakfast. And she says, how much do you want for the property? And he says 60. And she says, I can't afford 60. Would you take 30? And he says, I would take 30. And she says, good, I don't have 30, but I'll pay you at the end of the summer. And they shake on it. And she pays him in full at the end of the summer. So the story goes.
Wow.
So whether true or not true, the fact that the story exists, right? This is the legacy. This is what I want to do with my life, is to have the level of trust and the level of confidence to have that kind of story, right? That's to have that kind of confidence to say, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna set my goal. I'm gonna have this kind of confidence, and I'm gonna achieve it. That's what I want to do. And I'm going to serve people along the way, because they're going to have these amazing meals. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, very cool. All right. So second question, what are your hobbies is your second one. So unpack that one for us.
Yeah. Well, so too many times we overlook, like, oh, I just do that in my spare time. Right. And I don't also want to discount the fact that sometimes that's just exactly what you need to do. It needs to stay a hobby, but you need to pour more time into that. Like, if you love to fish, I'm not saying you need to go out and become a professional bass pro, or, whatever they're called. Maybe you just need to do it more often. Maybe instead of once a month, you need to set aside Wednesday nights is when I go fish, because fishing gives me life. But the reason that I include that on the list is more than one of the conversations that I've had. One particular guest, he raced with the Subarus that you see kind of hopped up. They don't race them on the streets, but they look like street racers. It started with that. I mean, he loved racing cars. When he tried to purchase aftermarket products, that was a mess. And so, in Bill Gates style, he's like, well, I do computers at my day job. This whole process with getting aftermarket pieces for my car is a mess. Out of his garage, he starts taking his computer knowledge paired with his passion for his cars, and he starts doing this. Like, then he starts not only getting them for himself and his friends, he's like, hey, I can grow this, and quit his job, brought on employees, sold his company 3 or 4 years ago for enough money that he never needs to work again. Probably, he didn't give me a full number, but from what I can tell, probably that maybe 3 or 4 or 10 people wouldn't have to work again is what he sold his company. But then that passion is still there, and he found another outside of his, different enough that it doesn't affect his non-compete, but he's back into doing what he's passionate about. And so it started with a hobby, and it doesn't have to end with selling your company for lots of dollars. It can end with, hey, I'm just going to spend more time on my hobby. But maybe once you start spending more time on that hobby, you see where this can turn into a side hustle if you need money, and maybe that side hustle turns into a new career.
Oh, I love it. Just this weekend, probably many of us were reading tributes to Jimmy Buffett and some of his hobbies. And I'm not sure that we should adopt all of the hobbies, but the fishing and the starting up conversations with friends, and making new friends and new acquaintances, and slowing down sometimes. Like fishing for sure. I read a really sweet tribute of fishing as a hobby, and that was just really neat. Yeah, finding time to pursue your hobbies. Maybe there's a passion there. Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Absolutely.
All right, so this next one, when you talk about it, can people feel your energy rise? Okay, so this is really important to me for me to understand because there are some of us who have a default setting that is enthusiastic, right? So
Yeah.
so you and I are on this podcast and our default setting, people can't see my hands, but the default setting is pretty high. Our
Yeah.
default setting is enthusiastic. The
Correct.
default setting is not here. So what is that? Did you have a setting that was lower than that?
Like you just said, we're very similar in the sense that we run at a pretty high, high level, right? So no, there's not a lot of calm in this guy, to be frank. But this is an example of my own. The first time I presented the many hands story, the guy across the table I didn't know, and in hindsight, I think that was kind of on purpose because I didn't want to present it to somebody that I knew because I'm like, man, if I screw this up, I just prefer it's somebody I don't know. But at the end of that, he said, "This is great. I want to learn more about this organization." He said, "Because you can't fake the level of passion that you have, and you've only been with this organization for a month and a half." And I know for me, I am good at sales, but what I'm really good at is building relationships with people. And that's why I've had the success in sales roles that I've had. And I tried one time really kind of to sell something that I wasn't passionate about, and it didn't work. So as much as like I have a background in acting and I think I'm a pretty good actor, the fact that, Jeff said that and almost every meeting since, and I hear that you're clearly passionate about what you're talking about. I know that I have a true passion for many hands. Now, to correlate that to somebody else, because it's maybe not your job, again, maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's helping your kid with math homework. When your energy rises, when other people recognize, like, hey, you really enjoy this, that's another road that you need to pursue, even if it's something as crazy as your kid's math homework. Like maybe you missed your calling to do something more with numbers or something along those lines.
Yeah. With people who have a naturally high energy or who have already found their passion, their enthusiasm level is already going to be pretty high. And so maybe this podcast isn't, or that question isn't useful to that audience. So not everything that we say is useful to everybody, right?
Sure.
But this question is particularly useful to those people who are maybe like that first gentleman that you referred to, who was kind of not as interesting to talk to and didn't really have a lot of engagement in what he was saying until
Sure.
he started talking about beekeeping.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And using that story, those two kind of go hand in hand, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for our listeners, if you are one of those folks who doesn't have a default setting of naturally enthusiastic, look for the places where the enthusiasm does show up and where others kind of turn their heads and look at you and say, whoa, where you been hiding?
Yeah.
And because that might be your passion, where your
Right.
energy rises, or when you're doing the thing and you keep doing it and you don't even feel the time passing. And all of a sudden you look up and it's been 4 hours or 2.5 hours or 6 hours, or it got dark and you didn't notice because you were so focused on what you were doing. That might be an indication that your passion is showing up right there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. For our listeners, if you are just joining in, I'm going to ask you to stop and rewind, if that's the word we use anymore, but go back to the beginning. Gen Xer here, sorry, because we are here with Tyler Kamerman and we're talking about 5 ways to find your passion. We started with a couple of his questions. We're on to number 4. So we've already gone through 3 questions. So you missed a bunch of it. We're on to question number 4. This is a good one. There's a decent chance I'm guilty of this one, Tyler. You better read this one.
So number 4 is, what, when you talk about it, do people tune out after a while and you just keep going? So I think Taylor would be fine with me sharing that this is where I got this one. So my first podcast producer, whom I adore, she helped me get it off the ground. I give at least 49% credit of Pursue Your Passion getting to where it is to Taylor. So she shared that when she started getting back into science and really started talking about that, like her husband, 2 or 3 minutes in is just like, like, I'm done with this conversation. And she's like, so I realized, like, I could talk about science pretty much to myself and not care because I was so excited about it. And she was like, that was ultimately what made me decide, like, hey, I have to do this, and kind of let go of what she thought, this side gig of producing and editing podcasts that she was growing. She's like, I need to let this go so that I can focus even more time on my day job. So kind of the opposite of a lot of the people that I was talking to. So yeah. And she did that again, back to the question, because like she could just go on and on about what she's doing at work and she's loved it and she's excited, and her husband's going, oh my gosh, I'm done with this conversation.
Here we go again.
Right.
Wow.
So yeah, so what are you drone on and on about that people get tired of you talking about? That might just be your passion.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So I just can think of all of these conversations of people in my life that I've just watched them. I just sit by and watch them have these conversations, and then they'll say, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I'm like, dude, I just watched you carry on for minutes longer than anyone else in the room was interested about XYZ topic. Clearly,
Right.
clearly you're passionate about that. And then I look in the mirror and I'm like, yeah, right here, guilty. Guilty.
I may have done that about many hands at our camping trip this weekend. Somebody sitting around the fire was like, hey, so tell me about it. And 3 hours later, everybody's falling out. No, it wasn't that long. But I realized about halfway through like my third story that I was like, oh, they were done after the first one, and you told another one and we're on to your third one. Like, time to just stop the train.
Yeah, when people will ask me, because I'm so passionate about what I do at Your Career Next Step and what we do and our mission, and I'm so absorbed in this, not because I'm a workaholic, I might be, but that's not why. It's because I so believe in what we're doing. I get so excited that when people say, "Oh, how's work?" I'll look at them and I'll check like, what question are you asking me? Are you looking for fine, or would you like to know the long answer? Like, how much time you got before I start talking?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. Okay, so 5 ways to find your passion. So we've gone through a bunch of specific questions here. Are there other resources? Is there more? What else we got?
Well, yeah. So I added kind of number 5 as like there's lots of like standard go-to things. I think you and I have talked about Enneagram in the past. There's strength finders, there's Myers-Briggs. There's all these different personality tests that actually can, and didn't mean to sound like I was throwing them away. They can be super, super useful and should not be ignored. I mean, if some of the rest of these questions have felt a little touchy feely for you because you're, more of the, I need to have a system. Well, there's systems out there too. I always like, and I shouldn't say always, I have mentioned a few different times on my show, a local gentleman, and I don't know if you know him, Sinikka, Adam Carroll. He has a book called The Build a Bigger Life Manifesto. And in that book, he has like a list of, I don't know, it's probably 100 words. And it's, circle the words that jump out at you. And then take the words that you circled and narrow it down to 20 or, whatever that is. Now narrow it down to 10. And then, from that 10, what are the 5 that are most important to you? And those are the values that you hold the dearest in your life. So like mine from a whole list again of 100 were faith, family, dreaming, service, and freedom. Now, again, that's very abstract unless you've kind of already got some ideas kicking around in your head what that might look like. So I wanted, and that's not necessarily to plug Adam's book, although I love Adam dearly. There are other more tangible resources if your feelings and your thoughts, like we kind of did on 1 through 4, don't resonate with you.
You bet. Well, and at Your Clear Next Step, we have access. We got Barb Rank's Life on Purpose program. We've got a variety of assessments. We got 360-degree assessments. We've got several of our coaches who will take you through assessments and coaching programs to help you find your purpose and find your passion. I mean, there are tools that we can do to help that. So you're welcome to anyone who's listening. If you're like, oh, I want something more concrete, we've got tools to help you get unstuck with Lynn Swanson. So we got all kinds of tools that will help you if you want the more concrete tool-based approach. In addition to we use several of the tools that Tyler just recommended and more than that even. So yes, indeed, they lots of tools and resources out there. And if you're not ready for a tool or you don't want to go that path, the first 4 questions that Tyler mentioned, these are Man, these are great and useful things, and clearly have worked for you and several others that you've been talking to on your podcast. For how long have you been doing your podcast, Tyler?
We just celebrated 2 years. No, I'm sorry. I think our next episode is 2 years because 52 at every other week, 52. So just shy of 2 years.
Shy of two
I
years.
celebrate. That's what I got confused about. We celebrated 50 episodes, but technically episode 52 will be 2 years.
Congratulations. That's a great milestone.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's been, listening to you say that, it's been fun too. I think if it stopped being fun, then, I'd have to reassess some things.
I would hope.
Yeah.
I would hope. So this would not be the Even Better podcast if I didn't ask you my trademark question. What's making you even better these days, Tyler?
What's making me even better these days? I have lots of things that I'm trying to improve upon, but one of the things that this job has stretched my bandwidth. I don't think I've pushed my bandwidth as hard as I am right now, which I know you have to be careful with because you want to make sure you're staying both mentally and physically healthy as well. But one of the things, it's simple, but it's not easy. I have been working on time blocking. And so blocking my time so that I stay focused on one task, from 8 to 9 o'clock, and then take a 5-minute break, and then 9 to 10 I'm on to the next thing. And I've been experimenting with shutting my email off during that time, shutting my phone off, because we're so, especially when like in my role, I'm done with work, we have this kid doing this thing and this kid doing that thing. And so I like the time blocking is one of those things that I would say is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple to implement, but it's not easy to stick to because it's so easy to go, oh, I gotta grab this call, or I have to respond to that IM, where, almost everything you read, it's like a badge of honor to be able to multitask, but almost everything you read is, if you really focus on something, you can knock so much more out in 45 minutes of actual focus than you can in 2 hours of, I'm going to do 3 different things at once.
For sure. Multitasking is a myth.
Yes.
For sure. I love it. So I will look forward to checking back in with you and seeing how that time blocking is going, because that is no easy feat, and it takes encouragement, and it takes stick-to-itiveness, as my grandmother would say.
Yes, definitely stick-to-itiveness.
Fantastic. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for your time today. What a joy to spend this time with you. I appreciate your insights, and thanks for your time.
Absolutely. This was great. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And thank you for all that you do as well. Your organization is fantastic, and you're doing awesome things, and I love your mission.
Thank you. Tyler, if our listeners want to get a hold of you either through Many Hands or to listen in to your podcast, how they can obviously reach out to us and we'll get them connected with you, but how can they reach out to you directly?
Yeah, absolutely. So website is www.tylerkamerman.com. So you just my name, it's a website, and it's got the links to the podcast as well as information about speaking and all of those good things. You can reach me through the website. About Many Hands, I'm happy to answer questions directly there, or, and this is going to be changing, but our current website for Many Hands is mh4h.org. So that's mh4h.org. And that is our Many Hands for Haiti website. It's got all the stuff you'd need and much more.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, Tyler, thanks again for being here. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Tyler Kamerman. We're talking about 5 ways to find your passion. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.